Okay, we've got this young lady, Anna Isabel, nerd culture, fake geek girls, and psychology of the nerdy gatekeeping. I can just imagine what's going on. Anna Isabel, she is a cosplayer. Say no more. What's happened? She's cosplayed. She showed up at one of these cons, and some guy who she sees beneath her, some nerd, actually started talking about who she's dressed as, and she doesn't know anything about the character. That's what's gone on here. She actually does a good job at cosplaying. But the problem that I have, and all these geek guys do have, is that she doesn't approach it honestly. She doesn't say, hey, I'm just here to cosplay and enjoy myself and show off my body. She wants the label, to take the label of geek or nerd when it suits her, and she'll drop that label in a heartbeat when it doesn't suit her, when there's no benefit to it. That's what these guys have an issue with. Now, this video is almost a half hour long. It's a salty video from her being a fake geek girl getting called out by the nerds, right?
Are taking the battle of nerd cred. Congratulations. Dude starts to prod you with all these fandom questions, which are seemingly innocent at first. Some of them get admittedly a bit too niche, so you do let
Called it. Now you can see what she's trying to do. A little bit too niche. So in other words, she's trying to paint it as if, they start getting overly complex. They start getting overly trivial. But let's face it, this young woman, probably didn't know the basics.
them know your knowledge of whatever it is you're talking about is limited, but you do love these particular things about it, and so you offer some polite remark and make an excuse to get the hell out of it.
Yeah, you realize that this guy is showing that you're a faker and you're trying to escape now.
There, left wondering if they jumped straight out of an internet comic. Anyone else have a similarly weird experience, or just me? Yeah, don't be that guy.
You see, it's like, oh, I thought this was gender neutral. I thought girls and guys were all nerds now. Obviously, the guys recognize you for what you are, and you got embarrassed, and now you're making this salty video.
Culture community, always fun. The act of which the appointed lords of geekdom determine whether you're a real nerd based on a set of principles more holy than the Ten Commandments. In reality, though,
Actually, they just start talking to you about the subject matter, and you prove that you don't know anything about the subject matter. Dear girls who take pictures in slutty clothing and glasses and label the caption nerd LOL, you're not a nerd, you're a whore who found glasses. That is a perfect quote. This guy called these girls out. Look, why do you try and grab the label for yourself? Right? You don't have to. You could approach these cons 100% honest and say, look, I'm just a cosplayer. I just like dressing up. I just like playing dress up. That's all right. Women love playing dress up. I have nothing wrong with that. I don't see anything wrong with that. But why can't you be honest? You never approach anything honestly. The nerd culture has become popular, and that's why you're there. You ladies are attracted to whatever's popular. You're very shallow. And the guys, they want to actually engage with people who have a common love and respect for whatever their subject matter is, and you lack it. So what's the worst case? They don't chase you girls out. They just call you out. So you're embarrassed, and now you're salty making this video.
Video will mainly focus on the arbitrary assessments of knowledge, emotional investment, and opinions within fandoms. Basically, the whole mindset of you're
not really arbitrary, though, is it? Okay, let's get into the heart of it.
Now, nerds getting picked on, bullied, getting wedgies from hell that would be a new one. The negative stereotype has been around since forever. But why? What did nerds ever do to warrant the scorn of dozens of teen films and unfunny comedies and real?
They're just vulnerable. Socially awkward guys who can't hold up in a fight are vulnerable, and that's why they're picked on.
Really, most Hollywood media, or even worse, the massive amounts of real-world bullying that grade school kids often face. I think a main reason as to why this is that
Let me check that out. Oh, real-world bullying. Layla is yet another young girl who was teased at school for liking Star Wars, amongst other boy things. So it's real world if it's a girl that's getting abused in any way. And she was just teased. She wasn't beaten up, was she? But when the guys do it, then they're just being wimps, right? You're going to like toss that aside. This is pathetic video.
I think a main reason as to why this is that assholes are just more likely to stick themselves onto people they deem different.
Not different, vulnerable. These guys are low status nerds and everyone picks on them, including you.
I mean, they stand out, they're a minority, them in what army? They're sadly just easier targets. But apart from liking things out of the mainstream, there were a few other insightful factors I found that likely play into this. Noah Berlatsky from The Atlantic suggests that issues of class difference and problematic cultural beliefs.
I think people get bullied for lots of reasons, most notably these perhaps is homophobia. Okay, so most of these nerds are straight guys. So you're going to bring in a homophobia into this? But most kids who don't fulfill gender roles in any of the variety of ways. Young woman, let's see. You would be the first person to turn around and give a guy a hard time for not fulfilling his gender roles. I guarantee that. You girls are the biggest homophobes around.
Definitely and unfortunately the primary victims, but also those who didn't quite fulfill the manly expectations set upon them. Those part of geekier or nerdier subcultures were typically sneered at for not being real men, for choosing more sensitive, intellectual type interests rather than the more masculine, athletic ones, for choosing Dungeons and Dragons and video games over football and other sports. While this was back in the day, and most nerds today fortunately can evade these skewed perceptions, I also have no...
Yeah, because it's become popular enough that the non-geeky type guys are getting involved and you girls are getting involved. That doesn't make them geeks. That doesn't mean they share what these guys share or suffer in this case.
No doubt that there are some backwards minds out there who are still probably prone to thinking this way. Another popular, if not controversial, take on the whole uncool nerd archetype was by writer and programmer Paul Graham in his highly referenced essay, Why Nerds Are Unpopular. In it, he theorizes that nerds and geeks stereotypically aren't popular because they simply have other, more important things to think about or spend their energy on. He acknowledges that most of them do have...
They're vulnerable. They're socially awkward, so they get picked on for that reason, and they can't defend themselves. And they're, like you say, it's part of a minority. So that's why they do it. Now let's get to the real, okay, we'll try the geek.
Like any group of people with a shared interest, a passionate subculture was eventually formed based on a shared love of comics, games, and other niche pop culture fandoms. For those who consider themselves a part of the nerd or geek community would know just how, I guess, freeing and satisfying it feels to be among people who, as luck would have it, are just as into the same weird and niche things you are. There's this...
Yeah, and you know something? They realize that you're not one of those people. You're a cosplayer. You just like showing off your body and getting attention.
Really fulfilling sense of belonging to be part of a community who actually gets your references, your near obsessive love for specific genres of entertainment, or who share the same passion you do in taking these things apart and discussing them. And thanks to the internet, these people are easier to find than ever, for better or for worse.
Okay, so you just bashed on these guys, for better or for worse. So these guys finding each other could be negative. Why? Because when they get together, they realize they have camaraderie and people like you show up and they reject you because you are not one of them.
But apart from their love of
And so you're bashing them and you think that's going to endear you to them? Like, this is pathetic. This is a pathetic, salty video.
sci-fi or superheroes, most geeks and nerds also bonded over the shared sense of social rejection and isolation. It also felt nice to have people who understood your insecurities, the lack of prom dates and party invites you may have experienced in high school, and everything else that made you feel like you didn't quite fit into the norm. And while geek culture is a fun community for the most part and offers this sense of refuge,
Hold it. I'm glad you showed this, because this is you were a dumb woman to show this. You're just showing that might be one girl over there, might be. Look at all these guys. None of these guys, Anna, are keeping girls away. The girls simply aren't interested. You see, when you take the costuming away, the girls bug off. They're nowhere to be found. When you look at, cons, whether it's anime or superheroes, whatever, the girls only equal the guys when they're wearing costumes. But when they're actually there to enjoy themselves, it's universally guys here. And of course, the gaslighting is that these guys are being mean to the girls to keep them away. No. If you have a genuine interest, you'll belong. Guys want girls there.
for all those who felt like they were an outcast all their lives. Sharing the title of social outcast also sadly bred this unnecessary feeling of exclusivity, as ironic.
They are exclusive. That's what being an outcast is. And you're not an outcast. You were never an outcast. So why would they embrace you? You're not one of them.
As that is, though we'll get more into that. Another thing I want to note is that there's a sort of romanticization that comes with being socially marginalized in this way. But a common tendency is to gloss over the deeper...
Yeah, that's why you want to grab the label. So you can say, someone who didn't suffer that way, you want to be able to say, I did suffer that way. Girls love their victimhood. There's cachet to victimhood for women and girls.
Underlying reasons why they're bullied or looked down upon, and these could tie into personality or character issues, but also broader problems like I mentioned earlier, like homophobic views, racism, classism.
There you go. Hear that, guys? This woman's suggesting you guys are homophobic and racist. It isn't the fact that you guys were bullied because you were a vulnerable target. And now she's only saying that too because she showed up. She's an entitled, spoiled person who wanted you to roll out the red carpet for her for no other reason than, well, she's such a special girl. And you rejected her, and now she's making this disgusting, salty, gaslighting video.
And other cultural prejudices, and many instead see their interests as the main target of scorn. Some even see themselves under the misunderstood genius archetype. And sure, there's a comfort in telling oneself that they're ostracized simply because they're envied for their intelligence, their creativity.
I'm sure a lot of these guys realize that they're ostracized because they're socially awkward and unathletic, and that's it. So, I mean, how would you say any different? Why don't we have a poll and ask these guys?
Their talents, that they display an actual passion for something, and all these other meatheads aren't. And hey, in some cases that might be true. But simply falling back on this mindset subtly dismisses all the other factors that come into play. Other and probably more important reasons behind their bullying and harassment. And it allows...
You mean like their racism and their homophobia? Prove it. Okay, oh wait, I want to get to that. That looks good right here. Yeah, I want to check this out right here.
Mainstream culture it is today, which you would think would be a really good thing for everyone involved. You'd think.
No, bitch. I'm a fucking nerd. Years of people teasing me and beating me up in school is a testament to that. You merely adopted the name. I was born in it, molded by it. Fuck you. Faceplant.
Yeah, that guy just called you out again. You don't suffer like those guys did. You're a privileged, pretty girl who is let's face it, vapid, and you like playing dress up, and you showed up at these cons, and not everybody embraced you. I suspect a lot of people did. They said, "Oh, pretty girl in the sexy costume, we like that," right? But not because everyone did. Now you're put out.
Faceplant.
As we now all know, nerd culture has evolved from being a target of ridicule in the past to now being a pretty largely accepted and even mainstream part of modern society.
Yeah, it became popular. And that's why you joined up in it and tried to grab the label for yourself. All you had to do, Anna, was not grab the label. That's all you had to do. Don't pretend. Don't be a pretender. Show up and be honest and say, look, I'm just a pretty girl like showing her body off in costume. That's what I am. And you know, these guys would probably treat you with a modicum of respect. But you don't. You want to be a leech.
Convention gatherings have never been more popular. San Diego Comic-Con is currently one of the world's largest international events. Marvel has been dominating the movie industry for the last decade, and people can literally make fulfilling careers out of playing video games and even cosplay.
Yep, the person playing the video game is a guy, and the cosplayer is a girl. Say no more.
Some of the world's greatest scientists and innovators are now being hailed as rock stars and glorified in the eyes of the media. So what happened? What's changed? Did we somehow enter the twilight zone between the 90s and now? While Rod Serling would have been proud, we can mainly attribute this change to capitalism. Surprise, surprise.
Capitalism. Are you one of those girls? Young lady, you love capitalism. You are the engine of capitalism. You are a heavy-duty consumer. I hope you're not going to be blaming capitalism.
As explained by Mashable, this massive boost of popularity can be traced back to the rise of comic book movies. Back in the day, comic books were a pretty niche field of interest.
Yes, but those comic book movies only came out because they recognized that the comic books were popular amongst a good crowd.
But they had an extremely loyal, super invested fan base. I mean, these people were spending hundreds
There you go. So they know it was a niche.
of dollars a year just to catch up on their favorite series, and of course, with this came a ton of emotional investment and even formed allegiances based on the superheroes or franchise you were attached to. So of course, investors eventually saw the potential of capitalizing on these passionate consumers and made many attempts to widen the scale of the audience and to get comic books in the spotlight of more mainstream audiences.
But you didn't necessarily become a cosplayer for those reasons. You didn't read the comics, even when it became popular. You just wanted to go and show your body off and grab attention. Oh, God. Oh, what a salty video. Okay, let's get this.
The thought. So here's where our main video topic finally comes in, and I don't want to be too mean with this. The whole concept of gatekeeping bothers me, but like I said,
Whether you're mean or not, I mean, let's face it, you're going to be disrespectful to these guys. Because you are exactly what they call you, a fake geek girl. You don't have to be a fake geek girl. You could just come out and say, I am a cosplayer. But you don't. You want to grab their title. They suffered as nerds and geeks. And you never did. So they don't want you grabbing that title. It doesn't belong to you.
it's not like I was immune to this way of thinking myself, so I don't want to get up on my high horse and simply shun the people who act this way, which is why I dove into all this context beforehand. But still, I do want to highlight the ways
You've been slamming these guys the whole way because they didn't accept you with open arms. This is pathetic.
This sort of behavior enforces some pretty toxic mindsets and perspectives that are just altogether
Toxic mindset. Toxic. They didn't accept you with open arms. What an entitled do-nothing you are.
they're unnecessary. So why was mainstream acceptance for nerd culture eventually met with backlash by some people from the community? Nerds and geeks who felt the need to reach...
Oh, this is important. Yes, I gatekeep my hobbies. No, I am not sorry. I don't want subversive little trogs, that's you, Anna, showing up, then demanding something I and my friends enjoy. Exactly. He's called you out. fuck you. You didn't want us to begin with, which you don't, Anna. And you are only now interested as a nerd culture has become popular. Yes. Fuck off and stay out. This, whoever wrote this, typed this, I should say, put it in a nutshell. And this is why you are salty and made this salty video. You are the most entitled, dishonest person around. This is cosplayers. Look, if you want an iota of respect, be honest about what you are about and who you are. Look, you just have to show up at these cons and say, look, I am a cosplayer. I want to show off my body. I want your attention. I don't know anything about the subject matter. That's it. Honesty changes everything. It's your bullshit that they see as disrespectful, because it is.
That people will inevitably be prone to judging other people in the community based on their cultural cred. This includes how much...
Well, you either belong to the community or you don't. You obviously don't.
You've consumed, what you've consumed, and how long you were into it before everyone else was. Hence the often cringy saying of, I was into it before it was cool.
But it's only cringy if it's untrue. If it's true, it's not cringy. Is it? Is it? Come on. You know, a lot of these things, like you said, Dungeons and Dragons, before it was popular, there were guys playing it. And so it's not cringy. It's only cringy for someone like you. I know people like you would say it. It's when someone who's lying, that's cringy to hear.
Before it was cool. Berlatsky says that it's this knowledge that's used and meant to be used as an identity and therefore as power, thus creating the unavoidable
That guy's full of shit. There's no power to it. All they are is an identity to say, okay, do you like this? Are you a connoisseur of wines? And then you don't know anything about wines, you're not a connoisseur. Every other aspect is allowed to have these rules. But because these guys are geeks and you don't respect geeks, and generally geeks aren't respected, then you think the rules shouldn't apply to them.
Tendency among nerds to gatekeep. You can't be a real Batman fan unless you know his full name, the entirety of...
Whoa. You just exposed yourself here. You're suggesting that if you don't know, just a moment. You're trying to say that if you don't know that Batman's alter ego is Bruce Wayne, that you could still be considered a consumer of Batman, a fan of Batman. This is basic stuff. This is the starter. This is the 101. If you don't know that Batman is Bruce Wayne, then Batman fans will immediately know you know nothing about the character other than his name is Batman. So if you have exposed yourself for what you are, young woman. You are a pretender. And they have the complete right to call you out on it. My God. You should be embarrassed for yourself if you were capable of it. But you're such an entitled little nobody that you can't. These guys, these nerds, have a complete right to gatekeep their community from losers like you. You lack complete self-awareness. You have no integrity, no honesty. You are completely entitled, and you made a cringy, salty video over being rejected by people that you look down on. You are the epitome of pathetic. That's all we have to say about this.